On September 14, 2019, Jessica Martinez walked down the aisle in a church filled with 200 witnesses. She looked into the eyes of the man she loved, said her vows, and kissed him in front of God and everyone she held dear. But 3 hours later, when the real groom walked through the reception hall doors, bloodied and gasping for air, Jessica's entire world shattered in an instant. Because the man she had just married, the man whose ring now sat on her finger, wasn't Michael Bennett at all. It was his identical twin brother, Marcus. And what happened next would expose a family secret so devastating, it would change 3 lives forever. Before we continue deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Jessica Martinez grew up in Riverside, California, the daughter of immigrant parents who owned a small bakery on Magnolia Avenue. From the time she was 7 years old, she worked behind that counter every weekend, watching her mother knead dough at 4 in the morning and her father balance the books late into the night. She learned early that love meant showing up, that commitment meant keeping promises even when you were exhausted. Her parents had been married for 32 years, and she had never once heard them raise their voices at each other. To Jessica, marriage was sacred. It was a covenant you entered with your whole heart, eyes wide open, forever. She didn't date casually. She didn't believe in testing the waters. When she fell in love with someone, she meant it completely. So when she met Michael Bennett at a 4th of July barbecue in the summer of 2016, she knew almost immediately that he was different from anyone she had ever known. Michael was a paramedic, 28 years old, with gentle brown eyes and a quiet confidence that made people feel safe around him. He didn't talk much about himself, but when he listened to you speak, he really listened. He would lean in slightly, nod at the right moments, ask follow-up questions that showed he cared. On their first date, they went to a small Italian restaurant in downtown Riverside, and Michael asked Jessica about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. Most men she dated spent the whole evening talking about themselves. Michael wanted to know her. He wanted to understand what made her who she was. 3 months into their relationship, Michael invited Jessica to a family dinner at his parents' home in Corona. That's when she met Marcus for the first time. The moment Marcus walked through the front door, Jessica felt a strange chill run through her body. He looked exactly like Michael. Same height, same build, same face. But something about Marcus felt different. His smile was wider, more performative. His laugh was louder. He hugged people a beat too long, made jokes that landed just slightly off. Throughout dinner, Jessica noticed Marcus watching her. Not in an obvious way, but in brief glances that lingered just a second too long. When Michael went to the kitchen to help his mother bring out dessert, Marcus slid into the seat next to Jessica and leaned close. "So you're the one who finally got my brother to settle down," he said, his voice smooth and low. "I have to admit, I didn't think anyone could do it." Jessica smiled politely. "Michael's pretty special." Marcus tilted his head, his eyes searching her face in a way that made her uncomfortable. "Yeah. He is, always has been. The golden child, the one who does everything right." There was something bitter in his tone, something that made Jessica want to move away from him. But before she could respond, Michael returned, and Marcus immediately shifted back into his charming persona, laughing and clapping his brother on the shoulder. Later that night, as Michael drove Jessica home, she mentioned the encounter. "Your brother's intense," she said carefully. Michael's jaw tightened slightly. "Marcus is complicated. We've had a rough relationship over the years." "What do you mean?" Jessica asked. Michael was quiet for a long moment. "When we were kids, everyone always compared us. Marcus was louder, more outgoing. I was the quiet one. But for some reason, our parents always favored me. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. But Marcus noticed. And I think part of him has resented me ever since." Jessica reached over and squeezed Michael's hand. "That's not your fault." "I know," Michael said softly. "But it doesn't make it any easier." Over the next 2 years, Jessica saw Marcus only occasionally at family gatherings. He was always polite to her, always friendly. But there was something beneath the surface. something she couldn't quite name. Michael rarely talked about Marcus, and when he did, there was always a sadness in his voice. "We used to be close when we were kids," Michael told her once. "We did everything together, but somewhere along the way, things changed. Now it feels like we're strangers who happen to share the same face." In January 2019, Michael proposed to Jessica on the beach in Santa Monica. He got down on one knee as the sun set over the Pacific, and Jessica said yes without hesitation. They set the wedding date for September 14th, giving them 8 months to plan everything. Jessica threw herself into the preparations with the same careful attention she gave to everything in her life. She made spreadsheets, color-coded timelines, tasted 17 different cake flavors with Michael by her side. Her mother helped her choose a simple but elegant dress with lace sleeves and a long train. Her father walked her through the church ceremony step by step, making sure she felt comfortable with every moment. Michael was equally involved in the planning. He helped Jessica pick out the flowers, pale pink roses, and white lilies. He spent hours with her choosing the menu for the reception. He even wrote his own vows, telling Jessica he wanted to speak from his heart about what she meant to him. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as Jessica had always dreamed. But then, 2 weeks before the wedding, something strange happened. Jessica was at Michael's apartment, helping him pack for their honeymoon to Italy, when Marcus showed up unannounced. "Hey, just wanted to drop something off for Mom," Marcus said, standing in the doorway. But he didn't leave. He lingered, watching Jessica fold Michael's shirts, his expression unreadable. "You nervous about the big day?" Marcus asked. "Excited," Jessica said, smiling. "Can't wait." Marcus nodded slowly. "Michael's lucky to have you. I hope he knows that." There was something off about the way he said it, something that made Jessica pause. But before she could think too much about it, Marcus left, and the moment passed. The day before the wedding, September 13th, Jessica had her final dress fitting at a boutique in Riverside. Her bridesmaids were with her, laughing and taking pictures as the seamstress made last-minute adjustments to the hem. Jessica's phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I love you more than anything." She smiled and texted back, "I love you too. See you at the altar." That evening, Jessica stayed at her parents' house, following the tradition of not seeing the groom the night before the wedding. She lay in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart full of anticipation. In less than 24 hours, she would be Mrs. Jessica Bennett. She would start a new chapter of her life with the man she loved more than anything. She fell asleep thinking about Michael's smile, the way he held her hand, the way he made her feel safe and cherished. The morning of September 14th arrived bright and clear, the California sun streaming through the windows of the church where Jessica and Michael would be married. Jessica woke up at 6 a.m., her stomach fluttering with nerves and excitement. Her bridesmaids helped her into her dress, carefully arranging the train and adjusting her veil. Her mother stood in the doorway, tears already streaming down her face. "You look so beautiful, Mija," her mother whispered. Jessica's father came in a few minutes later, his eyes red and glassy. "Ready, sweetheart?" he asked. Jessica nodded, her own eyes filling with tears. "Ready." At exactly 2 p.m., the church doors opened, and Jessica began her slow walk down the aisle. The organist played Pachelbel's Canon in D, and 200 guests stood and turned to watch her approach. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest as she looked toward the altar. And there he was, Michael, standing tall in his dark suit, his hands clasped in front of him, his face filled with emotion. Jessica's father walked her down the aisle, step by careful step, until they reached the front of the church. He kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Michael's hand, then stepped back to sit beside Jessica's mother. The officiant, Pastor Reynolds, began the ceremony. Jessica barely heard the words. All she could focus on was Michael's face, the way he was looking at her with such tenderness and love. "Do you, Jessica Maria Martinez, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Pastor Reynolds asked. "I do," Jessica said, her voice clear and strong. "And do you, Michael James Bennett, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Michael said, his voice slightly deeper than Jessica remembered. but she didn't think much of it. He was probably nervous. They exchanged rings, and Pastor Reynolds smiled. "By the power vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Michael leaned in and kissed Jessica softly, and the church erupted in applause. Jessica felt a wave of pure joy wash over her. She was married. She was finally married to the man she loved. They walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, smiling at their guests. Outside the church, they posed for photos, laughing and kissing and celebrating with their families. Everything felt perfect. Everything felt right. The reception was held at a beautiful venue in Riverside, a restored warehouse with exposed brick walls and string lights hanging from the ceiling. Jessica and Michael had their first dance to "At Last" by Etta James, swaying together as their guests watched and cheered. Jessica rested her head on Michael's chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling completely content. If this story has your heart racing, comment, "I'm still watching." Let's see who's truly following till the end. After the dance, Michael excused himself to use the restroom, and Jessica made her rounds, thanking guests for coming and hugging old friends she hadn't seen in years. She was standing by the dessert table, talking to one of her bridesmaids, when the doors to the reception hall suddenly burst open. Everyone turned to look, and there, standing in the doorway, was Michael. But not the Michael who had just been dancing with Jessica. This Michael looked completely different. His face was bruised and swollen, his lips split open and bleeding. His suit was torn and dirty, covered in what looked like mud and grass stains. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving, his eyes wild and frantic. "Where is he?" Michael shouted, his voice raw and desperate. "Where's Marcus?" The entire reception hall went silent. Jessica felt her legs go weak, her vision blurring at the edges. She looked at the Michael standing in the doorway, then at the man who had been dancing with her just moments ago. He had frozen in place near the bar, his face drained of all color. "He truth exposed." "No," Jessica whispered. "No, no, no." The man she had married turned and tried to run, but two groomsmen grabbed him before he could reach the exit. Michael, the real Michael, stumbled forward, his eyes locking onto Jessica's. "Jess," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I tried to stop him. I tried to get here in time." Jessica couldn't breathe. Her chest felt tight, her hands trembling. She looked at the man the groomsmen were holding, the man who had stood at the altar with her, the man who had kissed her and danced with her and vowed to love her forever. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus stopped struggling. He looked at Jessica, and for a moment, his expression was completely unguarded. There was pain in his eyes, and something that looked almost like love. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly. "I just wanted to know what it felt like. Just once. To be chosen instead of him." The room exploded into chaos. Guests were shouting, asking questions, demanding answers. Jessica's mother was crying. Her father was trying to push through the crowd to reach her. But Jessica couldn't move. She stood frozen in place, staring at the two men who looked exactly alike, trying to process what had just happened. What really happened? Michael pushed through the crowd and reached Jessica, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Are you okay?" he asked. Jessica looked up at him, at the bruises on his face, the blood on his lips. "What happened?" she whispered. Michael's jaw clenched. "Last night, Marcus came to my apartment. He said he wanted to talk, to work things out before the wedding. I let him in, and then he attacked me." Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. "He hit me over the head with something. I don't even know what. When I woke up, I was tied up in his apartment. He told me he was going to take my place at the wedding. He said you deserved better than me, that he could make you happier." Tears streamed down Jessica's face. "How did you get out?" "I managed to get free about an hour ago. I drove here as fast as I could." Michael's voice broke. "I'm so sorry, Jess. I should have seen this coming. I should have protected you." Jessica looked over at Marcus, who was still being held by the groomsmen. He wasn't fighting anymore. He just stood there, his head bowed, looking defeated. "Why?" Jessica asked, her voice shaking. Why would you do this? Marcus looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw genuine emotion in his eyes. Not the performative charm, not the calculated smile. Just raw, painful honesty. Because I've spent my entire life watching Michael get everything I wanted. Our parents loved him more. Teachers liked him better. Friends chose him over me. And then he met you, and I realized you were the most incredible person I'd ever seen. And I knew I would never have a chance, because you only saw him. Jessica felt sick. She turned away from Marcus, unable to look at him anymore. Someone call the police, Michael's father said, his voice hard and angry. Within minutes, sirens wailed outside the reception hall. 2 police officers entered and took statements from Michael and Jessica. Marcus didn't resist when they handcuffed him and led him toward the door. But just before he left, he turned back one last time, his eyes finding Jessica's. I know you'll never forgive me, Marcus said, but I need you to know something. Every word I said at that altar, every vow I made, I meant it. I know it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't change anything, but it was real for me. The police led him away, and Jessica collapsed into a chair, her entire body shaking. Her mother rushed to her side, wrapping her arms around her daughter and holding her as she sobbed. Michael knelt in front of Jessica, taking her hands in his. We'll get through this, he said softly. I promise. We'll get through this together. But Jessica couldn't stop crying. She felt violated, betrayed, humiliated. She had stood in front of 200 people and married the wrong man. She had kissed him, danced with him, believed every word he said. How could she ever trust her own judgment again? How could she ever look at Michael without seeing Marcus's face? The reception ended in chaos. Guests left quietly, murmuring sympathetically to Jessica and her family. The venue staff cleaned up while Jessica sat in a corner, her mother beside her, staring blankly at the string lights overhead. Michael's parents apologized over and over, their faces twisted with guilt and shame. We should have done more, Michael's mother said, her voice thick with tears. We knew Marcus was struggling. We knew he had issues, but we never thought he would do something like this. Jessica's father put a hand on her shoulder. Let's get you home, Mija. Jessica nodded numbly. She stood up, still in her wedding dress, and walked out of the reception hall with her parents on either side of her. Michael followed a few steps behind, his face pale and drawn. Jessica's struggle. That night, Jessica lay in her childhood bed once again, still wearing her wedding dress because she didn't have the energy to take it off. Her mother sat beside her, stroking her hair the way she used to when Jessica was a little girl and couldn't sleep. What do I do now? Jessica whispered. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You take it one day at a time, Mija. You grieve. You heal. And then you decide what comes next. Over the next few weeks, Jessica tried to piece her life back together. The marriage to Marcus was annulled within days. Marcus was charged with assault, kidnapping, and identity fraud. He pled guilty to all charges and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Jessica didn't attend the sentencing. She couldn't bear to see him again. Michael was patient with her. He gave her space when she needed it, but he never left her side when she wanted him there. He cancelled their honeymoon to Italy and instead spent quiet evenings with Jessica at her parents' house, watching movies and eating her mother's cooking and just being present. But Jessica struggled. Every time she looked at Michael, she saw flashes of Marcus standing at the altar. She heard Marcus's voice saying the vows, felt his hand on hers. It wasn't fair to Michael, but she couldn't help it. The trauma was too fresh, too raw. One evening, about 6 weeks after the wedding, Jessica and Michael sat on the porch of her parents' house, watching the sunset. I think we need to take a break, Jessica said quietly. Michael's face crumpled. Jess, please, don't do this. It's not fair to you, Jessica said, tears streaming down her face. Every time I look at you, I see him. And I know that's not your fault. I know you're not responsible for what Marcus did. But I can't separate the two of you in my mind right now. I need time to heal. Michael was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, his own eyes red and wet. Okay, if that's what you need, okay. But I'm not giving up on us, Jess. I'll wait as long as it takes. Jessica reached over and squeezed his hand. I love you, Michael. I need you to know that. I love you so much. But right now, I need to find myself again. I need to remember who I am outside of all this trauma. Michael kissed her forehead gently. I understand. They sat together in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, and Jessica felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe again. 6 months later, Jessica started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma. Slowly, painfully, she began to process what had happened. She learned to separate Michael from Marcus in her mind. She learned to recognize that what Marcus did was not a reflection of her judgment or her worth. It was a reflection of his own pain and obsession. She started painting again, something she hadn't done since college. She spent hours in her parents' garage, creating abstract pieces that expressed the emotions she couldn't put into words. She reconnected with old friends, went on solo trips to places she'd always wanted to visit, and gradually rebuilt her sense of self. Michael respected her space, but he stayed in her life. He texted her occasionally, checking in without pressure. He sent her flowers on her birthday with a simple card that said, "Thinking of you." He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel guilty for needing time. In March 2020, nearly 6 months after the wedding, Jessica called Michael and asked if he wanted to meet for coffee. They sat in a small cafe in Riverside, both nervous and unsure. "How are you?" Michael asked. "Better," Jessica said honestly. "Not all the way there yet, but better." Michael smiled, and Jessica felt her heart flutter the way it used to. "I've missed you," Michael said softly. "I've missed you too," Jessica admitted. They started seeing each other again, slowly rebuilding what had been broken. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and difficult conversations. There were nights when Jessica woke up from nightmares and had to remind herself that she was safe, that Marcus was in prison, that Michael was not a threat. But gradually, piece by piece, they found their way back to each other. In December 2020, Jessica and Michael had a small, private ceremony at the same church where they were supposed to get married. This time, there were only 20 people in attendance, their immediate families and a few close friends. Jessica wore a simple cream-colored dress, and Michael wore a casual suit. Pastor Reynolds officiated again, and this time, when he asked, "Do you, Jessica Maria Martinez, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Jessica looked into Michael's eyes and saw only him. Just him. No ghosts, no shadows. Only the man she loved. "I do," she said, her voice clear and strong. "And do you, Michael James Bennett, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Michael said, and his voice was exactly as Jessica remembered. They kissed, and this time, it felt right. It felt real. It felt like the beginning of something new and beautiful. As they walked out of the church together, Jessica felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had survived something unimaginable. She had been broken and had found a way to heal. And now, finally, she was exactly where she was supposed to be, with the man she loved. The real one. If you were Jessica, what would you have done? Could you have forgiven Michael for something that wasn't his fault? Could you have moved past the trauma and rebuilt the relationship? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more true stories that touch the heart and stay with you long after the video ends.